Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Wallach, and I'm going to be giving you a presentation on UITableView and how to implement one into your app. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I know these conferences can be a little expensive, so I'm going to try and make this worth your money and worth your time. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over what UITableView is, the different styles, the MVC architecture and how that works and how table views work into that, Apple documentation for the delegates and the required methods, do a little coding to show you how it all works, quick troubleshooting thing that I've run into before that can be annoying, and then run the demo. So, what is a table view? According to Apple, a table view is a means for displaying and editing hierarchical lists of information, which basically you can represent a lot of things in a table view. Like you see in the settings app that comes with iOS, they just have the different categories for each setting represented in the cells, and then clicking on a cell will take you into a different screen to do whatever you need to do for that setting. And then likewise, these are also table views. They look a little different because they've been customized. That's the Game Center app that comes with iOS, and this is just a random app, but it kind of shows you the different types of customizations that you can do and how versatile they really are. So here's the different styles that Apple gives to you. They have UITableView style plain, which is just a list of table styles, and then UITableView style grouped, which is a group list of cells, and then within the group you have a header view and a footer view, and then the cells going in between, which are both optional. And then you also notice at the top there's a navigation bar in each, which is also optional, but it's pretty common to see that in table views. So here's what a cell looks like. A cell is just like a stack of views. So you have the background view, which is usually a color or an image of some sort. The selected background view, which is what it looks like when a user taps on that cell. And then the content view, which this is like the basic plain style, which comes with an image view and label. And I got this from WWDC video slides from 2011 off of Apple's website. And then here, this is from the Big Nerd Ranch Guide Programming, iOS Programming by Joe Conway and Aaron Hillglass. It shows the MVC architecture, and as you can see, a table view is just a view. It goes in the view category. Your model would be your data model, which is what you want to show in the table view. And then the controller, like here, they have labeled items view controller, which is a UITableView controller. And that has to conform to the UITableView data source delegate and then the UITableView delegate, which we'll go over right now. So here's the UITableView data source delegate, which comes from Xcode documentation. It's also available on Apple's website, the developer website. So you see we have two required methods, cell for row and index path, and number of rows in section. Number of rows in section is pretty self-explanatory. It returns the number of cells that you want in each section of the table view. And then cell for row and index path returns a pointer to the cell for the table view. And you do your customization and initialization of each cell in that method. And then, like you notice, another common one is number of sections in table view, which you'd use for group table view. That'll give you how many groups you want in that table view. So let's go on. This is the table view delegate, which contains a lot of different methods for user interaction with the table view and what the table view looks like. So, and this is a small list of it. There's more on this is also from Xcode documentation, otherwise on Apple's website. So you can go on there and check those methods out. They're also very, very useful, excuse me. So let's do a little code and see how all this works. I'm starting off with a blank app that I've just configured the app delegate to accept the table view. So this is assuming that everybody kind of knows how that's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with an empty class, and instead of subclassing UITableViewController directly, we're just going to subclass NSObject right now, because I feel that it's a little more straightforward when you're beginning, because there's less things that Apple throws in there. They throw in a lot of methods that you wouldn't really need right away, and it can be a little more confusing. So I like just starting off with NSObject and then going right into the H file and changing the object to, or changing the superclass to UITableViewController. So then we can go into the M file and start implementing our methods. What a lot of people do, and what I like to do, is override the init method to call the super init method. And then instead of just calling init, we'll call init with style. So it gives it whatever style we want. Like we talked about before, there were grouped and plain styles. So we're just going to do UITableViewStyle plain. And then, like always, we'll check if self, and then you can do more customization in there, and then return self. So now for the delegate methods, the first required one that we talked about was number of rows and sections. So this returns NS integer, and then it's table view number of rows and section. So all you need to do is return what we want is, and for this we're just going to return 1,000. That tells us we're going to have 1,000 cells in this table view. A lot of times what you'll have is like your data model, and you'll have an array of objects. For instance, you would return the count of that array, and then that would be how many objects are in your cell, or in your table view, excuse me. The other required method we had was cell for row at index path, which returns a UITableView cell, pointer to that cell. And then that is table view cell for row at index path. So then this is where you start off your initialization for the cell. So we're going to say UITableViewCell. And we're going to try first to create it from the table view. So we have the table view object that's passed in right here. And we're going to say, so it equals the table view, and there's a method called DQ with reusable cell identifier, excuse me. And what that is just a way of keeping track of basically what type of cell it is. Like you might have different appearances for cells, or you might have different section for cells. So that just kind of groups them so you can keep track of them, and so the program knows where they are. So it's always good practice to check if the cell has been initialized. So if the cell is nil, we're going to want to create a new one, not from the table view object. So we'll say cell equals UITableViewCell alloc, and then we're going to init with style, just see, and a reuse identifier. So we're going to say UITableViewCell style, or UITableCell, UITableView, excuse me, sorry. UITableViewCell style default. And then we're going to use the same reuse identifier as before, because we only have one section in our table view. So after that we can do any initialization that we want, and we're just going to return a text string so we can have the number of the cell in the table view. So we're going to say cell dot text label, excuse me, dot text equals, we're just going to pass it a NS string with format, and we're just going to give it the number of the cell it is, and where we're going to get that from is what we call an index path, which is basically how the table view keeps track of which cell goes where, basically. So it's an index is what it is. So there's a row property and a section property. So we're just going to give it the row property, and that works like an array, so it starts off as 0, so we're just going to increment it by 1 so we know exactly which cell it is. Then all you have to do is return the cell, and your cell is set up to use. So now I already went through and did everything in the app delegate so that we can just run it and save a little time here. And you will see that we have our table view with 1,000 cells. So that was pretty easy. One thing that I've run into before, which is very annoying, is no data. So you might start off with a blank thing, a blank table cell, sorry, or table view, sorry. And then let's say you have the add button where you go into another screen and you create an object, and then you come back and you still see no data there. Usually this comes from not calling the reload data method for the table view. So you'll either want to call that and view will appear, or you can also do it in the block if you push the view controller and then you have a block for what it does on the return action. That's my most common problem. Otherwise, you'll get into a lot of situations where you might have a custom thing going on and it's a lot of other problems that you're just going to have to use documentation and other resources to fix. So table views are very important. You're going to most likely use them in any app you do, at least for like a settings page or something like that. KISS, my old teacher taught us this, just keep it simple, students. Start simple and then elaborate from there, get bigger and bigger, or more complex and more complex. You start too complex right away, you're going to run into problems. Code, code, code. The only way to learn is really just by coding and keep on doing more and more. You'll get better and more efficient at it, I promise. And then Apple documentation and WWDC videos are your best reference for any of this stuff. Apple engineers come up with stuff, and that's their specifications, so it's the best way to learn. So I'm about out of time. I want to thank everyone for showing up. If you have any questions, I'll be doing a lab later on. Otherwise, you can find me at lunch in the hallways later on. Thanks.